Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Welcome, everybody. Today, I'm so excited to have advocate, teacher, and author Bridey Thelen-Heidel on the show. And I've got to make sure I'm even pronouncing her name. And she's an English teacher, so I got to really watch what I say on today's show. But she is the author of the memoir, Bright Eyes, Surviving Our Monsters and Learning to Live Without Them. I love this because, you know, when we look at fear in life and things that can happen in our family and our relationships, fear takes over and there's a fight or flight, or, hey, how do we just hug the monster and get past it and get through it? And I think she's very positive and really shares how we can move forward no matter what is going on in our life, move forward from a really toxic relationship or situation and still claim our happiness. So welcome to the show, Bridey. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Appreciate you giving me the time to chat with you.
Oh, excited. Now, did I get your name correct or wrong? Or do I go to the principal's office? I did.
No,
I get extra ice cream then. No, it's I tend to go Dutch on people from living in South Africa. I was like, oh boy, I'm going to go Dutch on her, but I didn't. I did good. So I'm glad to hear that. But you had quite a childhood, and sadly, I don't think you're alone in that childhood of, your mom and, all of her friends that she brings home with her. That is not necessarily a healthy place to be for a young girl. And you've moved forward, and you've also had to say goodbye to a relationship that I think we've had to say goodbye to some relationships in our family, pretty much a lot of them. And we got looked down upon. But you kind of have to put shame aside and just kind of really realize that you can be in other relationships that are happy for you, that make you happy, and you can make the people in your relationships happy. And some relationships, no matter what you do, you are not going to win. You know what I mean? So you want to give us a little insight to your upbringing so people understand that they're not alone, because we know so many people are going through it even right now. And a young audience and an elder audience, it really doesn't matter what age, right? You can move forward.
Yeah. I mean, my life is probably not super unique, unfortunately, in the sense that I just grew up with an alcoholic, abusive mother, and probably had some undiagnosed mental illness as well. And so I was just connected to the terrible choices that she made. And she had us around a lot of really dangerous people. And she was, as I say in the book, she was addicted to dangerous men. And so I think I grew up, as the subtitle of the book, Surviving Our Monsters. I did grow up, surviving these men and surviving my mother. And at some point, I realized that my mom had become the one that I really needed to be saved from. And, it took a while for that to happen. Maybe it was happening all the time, but, I started getting a little cognizant of it when I was about 16 or 17. And, but by that point, I was addicted to the rescue. I was addicted to, codependency, but I was addicted to us. And she had convinced me that I was the only one who could save her, that I was all she had. And so leaving was like an amputation, of sorts, for sure. And I had a lot of false starts, and but I eventually left and didn't go back. And I was 31. It was right after my daughter's first birthday. And I had attempted to leave 3 or 4 times prior to that. But finally, when my daughter was born, I realized that she was going to be subjected to all the crazy, and I didn't want her to be. So, but I did have to learn how to live without my mom, going no contact. I know it's kind of a trendy hashtag right now, but there's a lot to it. And, my daughter said something pretty insightful the other day. She said, you grieve because you love. And,
yes.
I grieved my mom on a lot of levels, even as thick and twisted as our relationship was at the end. But I lived happily ever after. I'm doing that right now, and I'm so damn happy.
You go, girl. No, but it's really true. I mean, we've had to say, my mom and I are really close and we travel. And yes, we have our arguments, we have our moments for sure. And I've had grief from our relationship being close. Oh, you'll never find a husband that way. And I'm like, I beg your pardon. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if, yeah, kind of weird stuff like that. But at the same time, she had to say goodbye to her mom, and it was kind of my spurring on of it because it was not healthy. It was very toxic, and her mom was basically using the entire family, like everybody. Um, and my mom has come, Nancy has come from a very abusive family, like physically and emotionally, and just very twisted. And people have those relationships, and she left the country with me as a baby and got divorced and went to Kenya and worked in nature, literally out in the wild. And all of that went away. All of it was gone. And then you come back here. And that's when I was in my late teens, 19, 20, when I got here. It was so weird to meet the family and then quickly, first I thought they were all so cool and it was nice to have a family. And then like the honeymoon was over real quick. And then I was like, wow, this is not cool. And her brothers and sisters are still living that. And I just looked at Nancy. I'm like, we got to get away from this. And we did fall into the big trap of saving and rescuing. So what is with that?
Mm-hmm.
What is the rescue thing? Do they thrive on that? Is that kind of like, it's almost like they create drama just to survive. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's an adrenaline rush that comes with it, right? And your serotonin, your cortisol. I mean, I can only imagine it has a lot to do with a lot. There's hormones involved, there's emotion. In our case, and I'm sure, unfortunately, maybe in your mom's case, there was near death involved several times. And but I think that's the part that was hard to reconcile, is that as I got older, I knew how toxic it was. I recognized it. But we were, for so long, it was just the two of us against the world.
Mm.
And so separating from her was very hard because she did convince me. She convinced me that it was just us. And I was the one who, cradled her after a beating. And I was the one who called the police. And I was the one who fed her and cleaned her up. And, I think that becomes like that word, like parentification, right? So I was really the parent. And so now I'm not just leaving my mother, I'm leaving this person I've been nurturing and taking care of. And, she sewed me a Wonder Woman costume when I was about 5. And I, later on, as I got older, I realized that was a metaphor for so much in our life. She was creating this kind of superhuman myth that she and I both believed in. And that's a lot to put on a little kid, because for all the obvious reasons. But I mean, I think I was 15 and she had started a pretty good fire at a campsite that went into a creek. And I jumped in, like a superhero, right, to like put out this would-be forest fire.
Whoa.
And just realized, that she had done that. She had created this myth that we both believed that I was superhuman. And, on the outside, I was doing all these things. And on the inside, my intestines were dismantling. And I had an ulcer by 16 and, just completely falling apart. So,
because that kind of stress and trauma and when it's continuous and it's every single day, it's not like you have a bad incident. Like if you get in a car accident, right? And you're lucky enough to walk away from it, but there's a like a PTSD thing that can happen from a car accident or some kind of traumatic event. But if it's daily, like you're going to go crazy. And inside you're surviving, right? And inside, you have this smiley face on the outside. You're telling you're like literally becoming a liar to yourself and the world. It's like, I
Yeah,
feel like
I mean, you're
yeah.
definitely, yeah, definitely not allowed to show it, definitely not allowed to talk about it. And I think that was part of the process of writing this book and why I
Mm,
encourage everybody who has a story to write it down.
mm,
This was the way that I talked about it. I started writing in little diaries when I was, 9 or 10, and then went to journals, and then started writing out scenes, and then eventually wrote a book. And
wow.
just to exercise it out of my body.
And I want people to know it's out through She Writes Press, September 24th, 2024. You can get it now, order it, pre-order it, and you can go to Bridey-Thelen-Heidel.com. That's Thelen-Heidel.com. Again, English teacher on the show, so I got to watch what I say and do. Get my spelling straight. But this writing it down, right? It's kind of interesting because you go into those archives, right, in your mind and your heart, those memories, which can be triggering, right? And
Mm-hmm.
yet it's under your control in a way, even though it can get out of control, but it's like you're controlling your trigger in a way when you write. Does that make sense when you do it? Like you are already cognizant of what you're doing. I'm going to write this. It's freeing. It's still traumatic, but it's different. It's more cognizant, I think.
Agree for sure. And you do have to remind yourself that you're in control of it. And, I gave a TED talk last fall about this idea of exercising these memories up and out, and in a way to put a safety lock on the trigger, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the process of writing the book, was bringing all of these memories up and out. And I had to look at them, and I had looked at them, some of them in 45 years.
Mm.
And, we all know that one memory can trigger another and another. And I think the process of writing the book was so cathartic and so necessary for myself. And, I found that what we do, and I feel like a lot of people probably can relate to this, is, we hold on to these memories so tightly because we're trying to hold those people accountable, right? We want to make sure
Mm-hmm.
in our brain and our heart that they are held accountable. So we don't want to
Mm.
forget, so those of us who don't block it out, I have a sister who blocked everything out. But in my case, I remembered every smell, every sound,
Boy.
every song playing, right? And I was going to hold those people accountable till the end of time. And as I wrote them down, I realized once they were on the paper, I didn't have to remember them because the paper remembered for me.
Ooh.
And, once I had it on the paper, I could make a choice, right? I could, if it was typed, I could delete it. I could print it out. And some of them I did. I printed them out, and very dramatic, I threw them in my fireplace and burned them.
Oh, yeah, yeah. The burning ceremony is great. I love the burning ceremony.
Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of things that happened that I didn't plan or expect. And, but, writing it down, I didn't have to remember everything anymore.
Mm.
And it was an experience that I recommend to everyone. Everyone just write stories down, and it doesn't really matter what you do with them as long as you get them out of your body.
Exactly. You're writing it. It's like an exorcism of it, right? And then but you're in control. And narcissism, like narcissists want to control you. Like it's
Right.
almost like a cult, when you think about it. They want to mold you and do that. And I don't even know how conscious they are of it, other than that they just do it. You know, I don't know that part of it, but that controlling thing is sick, man. And it's like it can, I mean, it rules your life, and you're trying to, it's like it is like a weird form of slavery, what they do to people.
And
And
I described it once as like a parasitic relationship.
yeah, ooh, yeah.
That I was convinced it was symbiotic, right? I needed her, she
Mm,
needed me. But then I realized as I got older, she was just feeding off of me. She was feeding off of my energy. She was feeding off of my, at one point, money. She was
yep.
feeding off of my
Oh
time,
yeah.
my mental space, and,
Mm.
sabotaging my relationships with, my friends. I mean, if I introduced her to someone, she automatically didn't like them. It was like all those things that classic kind of abuser moves, right? Isolating you.
Oh,
So,
that's
right? She's doing all those things.
And they don't like the people that spot them. There's
No.
people who know and have, it's like I think you and I could both sit down in a room, meet people and go, oh, got it. I know who you are. Like immediately, and
Right.
if you don't even say or do anything, but they know that you know, right? So therefore they immediately don't like you. It's weird, but
Well, and I think,
yeah.
yeah. And I think there was, that was a lot of the reason that she didn't like teachers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We moved a lot. I changed schools 22 times before I graduated from high school.
Wow, I did 16. You beat me. You're the
Yeah.
first person I know that's beaten me other than military brats. But wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Oof.
But I think that is, at least I have no idea if that's really what it is, but we moved as a reaction to the men. We moved as a reaction to her, and but she did not like teachers. She never liked teachers, and would make fun of teachers. And of course, then I became a teacher, which was so ironic. But she would say, those who can do and those who can't teach. I mean, just really awful. And
Wow,
so,
wow.
but I think it was because teachers could see it. And I have no idea if teachers ever called her out. I mean, this was, the late 70s, early 80s, and definitely not as much awareness as there is now.
Paranoia too, because they know that you're spending time there. Like for Nancy, my mom, like when, her family, she couldn't wait to go to school. That was her thing because she was free.
Right.
At school was her savior. That was the place. But if the teachers got involved, she would get hurt because they didn't understand the toxicity. They didn't understand like an abusive household and how to handle it, because you can really get a kid hurt even more if you open your mouth.
Oh, 100%. And I'm sure I showed up dirty. I'm sure I showed up hungry. I know I didn't show up sometimes for a long time. I mean, I was absent a lot. But she taught me really early on. I was probably 5 or 6. And she taught me that if anybody ever asked a question about her, I could say, I don't know, or ask my mother. And so I knew there was a secrecy there. But I think teachers, especially being one now, we're so attuned to our kids. And I can only imagine, after having me in a class for a few months and kind of watching, it would be amazing that nobody ever called her out. I mean, I don't remember CPS ever coming. I don't remember anybody ever intervening, but it doesn't mean that they didn't try. It doesn't mean that that wasn't maybe one of the reasons that we moved. I have no idea, but I can't imagine. I know, I remember sticking my hand into the top of my head one time. I was probably like 9 or 10, and I just had a pool of grease on the top of my head. So, I was not bathing myself, and I'm sure teachers noticed.
Yeah, hey, but back in the day, we, people used to buy grease to put in their hair, or like Brill cream and stuff. So you're Brill creaming it. But here's the deal with this, going to school and everything. I think, my experience is going to so many schools taught me a ton, because the first day you're the curiosity, you're the new kid on the block, you're a curiosity, which can go well or really badly, or both, right? Normally both. And then then all of a sudden you're kind of like, oh, you're cool. Then you're dropped like a cold potato, it's like, ooh, or a hot potato, I should say, not a cold potato, but you become the potato, right? So you have to fight to balance into everybody's clicks and all of that. Then you choose, do you care? Eventually I just didn't care. Like I think by the time I graduated, I was ready to go. And school bored me, honestly, but because I had a good life, but I was traveling and I learned a lot on the outside versus on the inside, just the way it was at the time. And yet I did have some really good teachers. And one of my favorites was the English teacher, just so you know, because I love writing and poetry and all of that, which was great until they told me my idea of what the poem meant was wrong. And I'm like, you can't tell me that. then we had a problem. But the
Right.
thing is, it's school can mean so many and places, different places, because I think people listening to this, they could be going through it right now. They could be 70 years old and still shedding the toxicity, right?
Right.
So
Right.
there's definitely as a youth, I worry. I know that you do a lot of work with LGBTQ plus youth. In fact, I wish you were
Mm-hmm.
just on a show we did about teen suicide because of it,
Mm.
of not being heard. And then next thing you know, you're too late for the kids, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, that's why I started, I run a gender sexuality alliance at the high school where I teach, and I have since
oh,
2006. And it was a suicide note that started the club. That is how, I got online that night, and I was probably Ask Jeeves or AOL or something in 2006. And I just looked up, what do I do? And I found at the time they were called Gay Straight Alliances. And I started one a couple days later,
that's
and we've been
awesome.
running it ever since. Yeah.
Oh, you got to come back on a show for that. Let's
Oh,
serious. I
thank
mean it.
you.
I mean it because it's
Yeah.
so crucial. And there's a lot of it's gone political, which sucks, right? Because this is about love and care, kindness and community. That's what we're always trying to do on our shows. It's community. It is. It's everything.
Well,
We're
yeah.
our yeah. And when you have, I mean, it's like you in a career or a job or you go to work and you could have someone that's really just horrible, right? Just negative and whatever. There, it's almost like a cancerous human being. But that can happen in our family relationships. You can leave work and quit and go somewhere else and take
Mm-hmm.
steps or create your own job or whatever. There's these easier steps, right, for that. But family, to get past a toxic relationship and to leave. And I know what you're talking about is not necessarily, it's not always like the physical leaving. It's like, hey, I want to be away from you 100%. I don't want you coming to my daughter's birthday party. I don't want you to
Mm-hmm.
mess up anything. And when we did that, it was really cold. My mom's there were 6 kids in her family. He was murdered. And
Oh.
because we had like basically said enough, we're not doing anymore, with you taking all our money, taking all our time, telling us to go get jobs instead of doing what we love, all kinds of bad, like it was that I can't even get into that whole story, but it was time to say enough and goodbye. And of course, she was going around and writing all these crazy letters to everybody and got them all wrong. So she was trashing each family member to somebody and sent the wrong letter to the wrong person. So we all got the letters that were trashing us, right?
Oh
All
my
of us.
gosh.
And so eventually, well, that helped us, with our case. Everybody just thought my grandmother was sweet and fun. I did until I really got to know her. And she was just using everyone. And it
Mm-hmm.
was it was a crazy thing to say that's enough. Well, when Nancy's brother got murdered, she wasn't allowed to go to the funeral. She wasn't even told about it. And we found it
Mm.
on it was on TV because it was the largest
Oh my
industrial
gosh.
shooting in Florida. She saw it on TV and there was like because we walked away, there was no retreat. Like I would have still reached out if I was one of the family to say, "Hey, you know, but there wasn't." And through the kids, his kids, that was fine because we never would walk away from the kids. You know what I mean? But just one person is what we were really walking away from. So through some of that, we were fine, but that's hard. So, Bridey, you know, when people decide to make a choice to leave, it can come with all kinds of strings and baggage that can get wonky, and shame can be part of it. People can look down on you. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's walking away. It's not always physical. It's about like no contact, right? We're not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Any advice for folks, for youth? I know it's really hard and sometimes easier depending. But advice for people to do it because like even you said you had so many, false starts. But a
Mm-hmm.
false start isn't that the next it's like a stepping stone to the real
Mm-hmm.
escape, right? And I don't say
Right.
escape, it's
Right.
like a getaway, like plan a vacation, you know? So
Well, yeah,
yeah.
I had a relative of ours tell me, I was several years into, not having spoken to my mom. And she said, well, you have to. She's your mother, you know, blood is thicker than water, whatever, you know. Mm-hmm. And I, you know, I had to remind her that she didn't know the mother I knew. She didn't know the person I knew. Nobody knew the person I knew. And so my decision was my decision. But I did have to stand up to some family members who thought I was being dramatic or thought I was being, you know, high and mighty. And, you know, I write in the epilogue of the book, I kind of blame some of that on a little bit on that myth of family and how it's perpetuated even like at TJ Maxx and Home Goods. You know, you have all those stores that talk about family is forever, and they have these kitschy little sayings about, you know, well, you call it chaos, I call it family. I mean, just all those little wooden signs drive me nuts, because I think that is what compels us to stay, are these myths that blood is thicker than water and you have to stay no matter what. And who do you think you are? And, you know, I also write about how I got called a lot of names, but I never got called back. So, you know, my mom, through people, I got called some names, but she never called to apologize. She never called to ask me why I stopped answering the phone. She never called to ask anything. And it was because she knew. She knew. Yeah. And, you know, with my own students, I teach high school now. I taught middle school for a while, but I've been teaching high school about 15 years. And I see students struggling with this, especially seniors. And some of them are really ready to make that break. And, you know, obviously I have to step lightly around this topic because they're still in their parents' homes and it's not, I don't know the whole story, but I do try to convey to them that they can rewrite the story they've been written into. And that the story they have been written into doesn't have to be the one that they buy into at all or stay. And so explaining to them that, you know, my feeling when I was younger, I could look around and I knew when I got to make my own choices, I would have a better life. I could feel it with everything in me that when I was in control, so to speak, I would have a better life and I would do things. And I did things opposite from what I saw growing up. And I see that with some of my students. They are just so desperate to have a different life. And I think that's really the power of we have as teachers, in the sense of being compassionate and empathetic, but also being a little bit transparent. And I'll share with some of them, you know, I have kids who are transient and homeless, and I'll just share with them. I went, you know, changed high schools 5 times. I couch surfed, I worked. I barely graduated from high school. I lied my way through graduation. You know, I got busted because I had something like 55 absences my senior year. And I'd been staying in different people's homes and working full time. And I lied to my principal and told him my mom had cancer and that I'd been leaving because she was getting treatment. But that's a survival skill, you know, and I graduated with good grades. But it is something to share with my students, not that part of it, but just the understanding that you can create a new life. You can make different choices. They might be hard and they're going to be very unpopular because, you know, the people who are causing us the trauma enjoy having control over us and need us, you know?
Oh yeah, the need thing. And then how dare you? You know, how dare you, you know, you've used me. And I'm like, what? You know, when I looked at that when we had to do our chopping the cord kind of thing, as we say. And it was very, you know, it's you know, how you have to pinch the snake right before it strikes you. And part of that is planning, and to get away and to get to that no contact zone. Sometimes you've got to know you've made it thus far. Like, you've got to pat yourself on the back, and you do this brilliantly in your TEDx talk, talking about resiliency, right? And understanding bravery, right? Understanding that you've done all these things and you've made it thus far. It may have been really difficult. It's hard, but you've learned these skills. You know deep down who you are. Even if a narcissist has turned you into a liar, right? Because they do. Right. They make you lie to the world. Oh, I'm fine. I'm smiling, but deep down you know you're not. You're lying to yourself, but deep down you know, right? And you know that that is not your fault. That is not it. But to get out of it, be brave and strong and have a plan. Don't just have an emotional reaction. And that's what they thrive
Mm-hmm.
on, I think, is emotional reaction. It's almost like they want you to so that they can control you more. Like, look at you, you're acting out, you know, instead.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I'll tell you, there's a scene in the book where my stepfather of 10 years, his name is Danny, in the book, and I end up seeing him when I'm about, I think it's like 35. And I haven't seen him since I was maybe 17, 18.
mm,
And I see him at my uncle's wedding. And I know he's going to be there, and I've asked for him to stay away. I've asked my uncles to keep him away, but of course he comes over and confronts me. And that is one of the first things he says is, I know you want to react like your mother, like make a scene, make a scene. And he starts calling me names, and all he wants to do is get a rise out of me. And I just stayed very quiet, and I whispered, and I stood up, and I was nose to nose with my monster. And, I just said, well, I've waited for this day for a long time, and you're old and dying, and I'm amazing. So have a good life. And it felt
yeah.
great. It felt really great. I just didn't give him the reaction that he wanted, because you're absolutely right. He was looking for me to, go into hysterics and fall to the ground. And I didn't. And I was really proud of myself.
And it's easier to get to that level when you're out of it on a daily
Yeah.
basis, right? When you're on a daily basis,
Mm-hmm.
it's really difficult. But getting
Mm-hmm.
out, I really believe people should plan it better. Like you've got to plan it as best you, not better, I shouldn't say that, as best you can so that it is successful. And if you have to go back and you have false starts, you have false starts, right? That's always it. And, but plan it. So it's not an emotional thing that you didn't think it through. So you know what I mean? You want to have it work for you. And through that and creating some kind of plan, if it's possible, sometimes you just need to run for your life and get the hell out. But
Right.
if you have a plan and think it through and you have backups, plan A, B, C, D, sometimes you need that in life. I feel like that's part of healing yourself and working with yourself as a team. You talk about having two minds, right? One mind talking to the other mind kind of thing. And that's kind of it, where I believe when you start making plans to do something for you, like when you go to the doctor or the dentist, as much as none of us really enjoy that, right? But while you're there, and even if you have some issue, like, oh, we're going to give you a root canal. Oh, hell no. But they're going to do it. When you start going into the healing portion of what you can do for your body reacts in this really amazing way, telling you, oh my gosh, thank you. You're actually caring about me right now. I'm going to care for
Mm-hmm.
you back. You suddenly, your body and your brain and your soul and everything becomes a team. And you realize you're not alone, just in your own self. Does that make sense when you start doing planning to get out? It's like you become your own team in a way.
Well, absolutely. And I think, again, like going back to what I said earlier and what we were talking about, I was addicted to saving her. And I needed, just as an addict, I mean, I went to some Narcotics Anonymous meetings with my stepdad and went to Al-Anon, as the child of an alcoholic. So I'd been to some of these 12-step programs, and I felt like when I finally left, I needed the support of people around me. I needed people to remind me to stay gone. I needed people to remind me it was okay. I needed
wow
I needed to walk through in my own way. Not that I walked through all the 12 steps, certainly, but I definitely walked through some of the steps. But I think, like you said, having a plan, I had a slight plan when I left, but I also made sure that I had people around me. I have always surrounded myself with really wonderful people, really wonderful friends. I married a very, very kind, nice person.
Cool.
I just think I've always been mindful of surrounding myself with people who, I want to be like, or people who are positive, people who are good for me, because I spent so much time being around people who were bad for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's part of the plan, is figure out, who are your five, right? Who are your five people?
Yeah, exactly. No. And be one of the five for them, right?
For
When they
sure.
talk about blood is thicker than water, I always shake my head because I really detest that saying, because I
Me
have
too.
people in my life that are incredible. And they put up with me. And I go, my God, you just put up with me, you know? God, how do I make it back to you? Like you do. You just everyone be there for each other in ways and be accepting and realize none of us are perfect either. But when you have those right people, it's like you get to choose your family, right? When you meet the right people and you cultivate those relationships and you realize how special they are, it becomes this beautiful, it's like tending the best garden on the planet, right? And if one of your plants in your garden isn't doing well, you want to do the all you can to keep that plant nurtured and happy. And that's the same way with family and people. And it's the people in life that support you when you go through really difficult decisions and then take action on those decisions are the best people on the planet. They are. They are. They're everything. And it's really also to keep you doing it, right? That support of just like not letting you go back to it, you know? So picking your own family, does that sound crazy? Like you could just go to the garden and pick your own family members and they have to be reciprocal of that. Do you agree with doing that?
I feel like I definitely have picked my own family, and I still, I'm still connected to a couple of my siblings for sure, but I think it's just surrounding ourselves with people that it just feels good. And I was surrounded by such negativity and toxicity for so long. And, I think too, as a teacher, I feel a real responsibility to walk my talk. And if we're sitting there telling our students, like, you can have the life of your dreams and you can be whatever you want or be whoever, and here I am, if I wasn't really doing that and wasn't really trying to live my best life and make the best choices for me, it would feel pretty hypocritical. So,
and how does it feel? Let's talk about that, because about actually making those decisions, making those choices, and then follow through is the most important. That's what I was saying, like with picking your own family, you have people that will help you follow through on your dreams, right? It's like we need support groups like for just going, if you're going to get your 10,000 steps and did you do it? Did you do it? And if someone knows you need to do those 10,000 steps and they're like in your 5, as you say, or maybe they're in your 10, right? And it's like, this is my buddy for that. You're more, you're going to achieve your goal, right? If you have those people on your side. So yeah, that's huge.
Right. Well, and in my case, the only way really to let my mom go, and this is extremely dramatic, was I buried her alive. I had recently, at the time I was about 33, so I'd not talked to her for a couple of years. And I had 2 really wonderful dads growing up. And my first dad died, and I was grieving him, and I was so upset because he was just the greatest man, and she was still alive. And I realized I needed to bury her. I needed to not think she was out there, that she couldn't call, that I couldn't call her. And that is really how I severed the ties forever, is I just let her go. And it's a challenge right now because she is alive and she knows about the book. And I doubt she's very happy about the story, but it's my story. As we're given permission to tell our own stories, it's my truth. But I've had to ingest the last couple of weeks, especially, doing interviews and kind of pre-launch things. I've had to remind myself that, she's gone. And I've almost had to, I don't know if it sounds really dark, but I've had to kind of rebury her. Like I have to I have to not worry about her hearing this interview. I have to not worry about her reading the book, because then that affects everything that I'm doing right now.
Well, then it becomes a whole bunch of new triggers, right? So it's like you're standing, and your truth is your truth. And that's what narcissists do. That's where they start playing the lying game. Oh, you're a liar. You're this, you're that. You're making this up. You're being over dramatic. all of that crap. I mean, oopsie, sorry, English
Right.
teacher, but
Yeah.
it's a good word. There was Thomas the Crapper. That's how we got toilets.
Right.
So there it is. But the
Right.
reality is they do start to play with things, right? That's the manipulation that a narcissist does, is a manipulation. And it's horrible. And so when it's your truth, and none of us remember everything perfectly. So let's just remember that, right?
Right.
We
Right.
don't. But if you feel something because of something and it was never rectified, because they never apologize, ever. They
No.
never really
Well,
do.
and
They'll
I
do a
think
fake apology, is what I call them.
yeah. And you have to give yourself permission just to tell your truth. You have to give yourself permission to tell the story that is burning in your belly, and it's coming up and it's coming out. And I think all memoir writers, we have something in the author's note that says, this is my memory. It's probably not yours. And if it's not, write your own book, I mean,
yeah, go get your own bookstore, y'all. Yeah.
Yeah. But I also did something that is a little bit different. I wrote this book in present tense, and I wrote this book as I was living through the experiences. So I don't really have all this kind of wise recollection and wisdom. I'm just writing it as I'm going through it. And that was the best way for me to handle my truth, was to write it as I saw it. So as a little kid, this is what I see. I don't know what some of these drugs are called, but I know this is what they do to the people who are doing them. I don't know, I don't know how bad this guy is, but I'm going to walk into this room and I feel weird, but I'm going to go in. And so that's how I chose to write the truth, was just write it as I was experiencing it. Yeah.
Well, I applaud you for speaking out and telling your truth to the world and publishing it and going through the process and going through, like you're saying, all these interviews and all the work that goes into standing up and telling your truth, because it's difficult and it's not going to get easier right now. You're at the beginning of it. Sorry. But
right. The book hasn't even come out.
but however, let's use the word however, there's going to be so many people that are positively affected by what you've done that it really just weighs it all out. Like all the other garbage, it is garbage. Like here, cream rises to the top, right? So you get to be the cream. You're there saying, hello, I can be made into brie cheese. Let's go, people. So that's how I look at it. And so it's never easy getting to the top. And inch by inch, it's a cinch. Yard by yard, it's hard. So those little steps, those plans that we were talking about, making plans, getting your people aligned, getting your way out is always hard. And, people always do that about abused women, domestic violence. Oh, why didn't you just leave? It is not easy, because if you do it wrong, you're going to get hurt even worse. So it's everybody's at a different situation, a different place, different level. So just make the plan as best you can, because even if you have to run for your life, suddenly you already have that plan in the back of your head and have it in your head, right? Isn't that the thing too? You kind of have to live by it.
Well, and I've been one of the processes I've been going through is opening up to helping domestic violence, our shelter in my community, live violence free. And I've been opening up to that, to just give them the kids' perspective that, if the mom is brave enough to walk through those doors, you have some kids to worry about, kids who you don't want to repeat the cycle and choose the same kind of partners, but kids who are also, again, addicted to rescuing their parent and wanting to just soothe their mom and do anything to make her happy. And so I've been happy to give that perspective to the staff at our local shelter. And I'm interested to keep doing that work. Yeah.
That's awesome, because, abusers create more abusers, right? And that's a hard truth. It's a very difficult truth. And when you can change it, and as soon as you identify it, you see what's going on, don't second guess yourself. Do not, because they want to second guess. They thrive on not letting you second guess, right? And if you do, then you're nuts, right? How many times have you gone through that? Oh, you're making it up. You're nuts. You're full of it. You always make a big drama out of nothing. Don't. I mean, seriously, Nancy and I have been through it, and And I just, standing up and even having this conversation, I was like, oh man, we're really going to do this, aren't we? So now everybody knows our laundry. Okay. We've done it a lot of times on our podcast because, and why we say it is not to hurt family or to hurt anybody. It's to really understand that you can get out of it. I mean, right now we have internet on and off as we record, but I'm enjoying a beautiful view. We have fancy cheese in the fridge. I mean, who doesn't want that? Unless you don't like cheese.
It's great.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I do. And
do it.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I appreciate so much in the last couple of years, just, I've been writing a blog and then again with the TED Talk, so many people have disclosed to me some of their truths. And, you think that you've heard it all. And once The Glass Castle came out, everybody's like, oh, we've heard that story. But, everybody has a story. Unfortunately, a lot of women have stories as well. And I think, if you're of a certain age, and I'm over 50 now, and I didn't grow up going to therapy. And so I think there's a whole generation, right?
Oh,
there's a whole generation of us that didn't go to therapy.
And we do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking now. We're talking in our 50s, and we have adult children. And I saw this thing on TikTok. There were 71.5 million views of adult children going no contact with their parents. And so whatever it is right now, this is the thing. And a lot of people are making those choices. And it's
That's
fascinating to me.
At the same time, I also think there's a generational thing happening too of when you talk about mother-daughter, right? So my mom and her mom and, and she made a choice. When she went to Africa, she went to Africa, and she didn't really understand that her mom was part of the problem. She always thought it was her dad until later, right? Then it was like, holy cow, because she never tried to get away. He was abusive, but he was on all kinds of narcotics because of health. So it was never really like he was messed up, right? He was messed up as an individual anyway. But she was like, why didn't mom ever try to save us? She didn't. So that was there, but she just went, she was probably too weak or there's 6 kids, right? But then later she was like, holy cow, man, this woman is really manipulative, and didn't understand all that until later in life. And that's a really hard pill to swallow. It's really difficult, but she had really, Nancy, set up her own life and was happy and doing things that, single white woman in Africa, which women were looked down upon. You can even open a bank account without having a man by your side. And she, would go in the street and find a guy and say, you're going to pretend to be my husband so I can open a bank account.
Oh my gosh, Nancy. Nancy's amazing.
Oh, she's a badass. Don't mess with her. She's a badass. She's awesome. So like the mother-daughter relationship, I really identify with because it is complex, right? But, she really went for it and then had to go through it later in life. And it was traumatic for me to be the one going, you got to dump grandma. I thought grandma was cool, but she's not. She sucks. She's not caring. Right. And this and that. Right. So what I think though is now that I'm about to hit 50 as we record this. So I get to say that and have fancy cheese. I think that women, so I'm talking about the mother-daughter thing and son, right? But most sons get away. They're the, everybody bows down to the son kind of thing from what I've seen. Mm-hmm. So I'm not always right, but just an opinion. You can yell at me later, everyone. But there's this weird thing with mother-daughters. Like you definitely had that, right? Where we're the team. We're going to save the world. We're going to do this. It's us against the world, right? It's us, right? Mm-hmm. Now my mom and I have that. But we do kick ass together, right? We do.
Right.
But then we have our fights. Like I said, don't ever think it's all hunky-dory. It's not. And if it was all hunky-dory, it ain't. That's really where it gets weird. She, I think she had to deal with her mom because her mom was manipulating everything because that is a survival mechanism. So when we do all this no context, I'm not giving everybody a free ride here, but we do have to snip it off to heal ourselves so we don't pass it on to the next generation, i.e. your daughter, right? But I think women, and there's men who manipulate and do this crap all the time, like nonstop. But I think on the women side, it is part of a survival mechanism. It's the middle ground between fight or flight. This is the survival mode. Oh, I learned how to, have 4 pots cooking on a 3 burner stove. I can do that. And that is what's going on, I think, how it's gone down through the chain, and you can't fix it. As the daughters, you can't fix that because they're not going to change, because that is who they've become at that point. And maybe they learned it from their mother. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, for anybody who is considering it or in it right now, I was speaking to a group of people, and this woman came up and said, I've been no contact with my mom for 3 months, and I feel so selfish. And I go, good. I'm like, being selfish is not a bad thing. We're convinced it's a bad thing. We're told it's a bad thing. But putting yourself first is, again, it is a survival tactic. Like, you have to put yourself first. It's like on the airplane, you have to put the oxygen mask on first before you can help anybody else. And so, when we're called selfish, I mean, okay, I think you have to be okay with a little bit of that. But it is because, you want to love your mom. And I'm sure, like I said, I mean, there's probably love in there somewhere, I'm sure, for her, just the way that I talk about her and the way that I write about her. I have gone through a process of forgiving and all of those things just to heal myself. But, I think you want to love your mom and you want to have that relationship. And luckily for me, I did have a daughter, and I was scared to death to have a daughter, but I did. And I think it's been the greatest blessing ever, because I get to be the mom I wish I had. And I'm a great mom, and I'm a really, really good mom, and I'm gentle, and I've never put my hand on my kid, and I've barely ever screamed at her, and and we get along great. And I've worked at it harder than, practically any other relationship except my marriage, because I'm a great wife too and a great partner. But it's possible it's possible to leave. It's possible to stay gone. It's possible to live happily ever after. And I hope that when people read the book, there's a little bit of a how-to manual for them, because I do explain how you do it, or how I did it. And I hope a lot of healing comes from it.
I think so. I think what you've done is outstanding. I really do. And it's not that it's just one book, right? You're active in so many different ways. So everyone, again, the book, go follow Bridey Thelen-Heidel. Did I say it right? I'm going on weird again.
You did, yeah.
I'm getting there. I still want to say Thelen. It's just a thing, Dutch thing. Everyone, go to her website. You can pre-order the book. It comes out September 24th. Go watch the TEDx talk. That link is in the episode notes, and so is Bridey's website link is in the episode notes. So wherever you're listening to this, whether it's YouTube or Spotify, or Apple, wherever, just click on that, and you can hear it. And go get it and give it to a friend who may need it as well. That's another way. Sharing is caring, actually, right? And that's, I think, today's podcast really shows that. So thank you so much, Bridey. We really appreciate you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. And happy birthday.
Thank you. It's coming.
Yay.
It's coming. That 5-0 is like, come on, come over the hill. It's fun on the other side.
The best. It's the best birthday ever. You're going to love being 50 plus. It's amazing. Oh. You get your AARP card too.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
And it comes with a free cooler.
Oh, well, we like that. You know that. I got to keep the cheese cool. That's good.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. During your trip to the lake.
Thanks, Bridey. Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.